that time of the year, just a handful of days left in 2020. Start making New Year's resolutions. You start thinking about what you can do better in 2021, how you can improve yourself. And crazy as it sounds, I think this could apply to sports as well, your fandom, how you view your teams, so on and so forth. So I'll ask you guys, and I'll start with you, Nick. What is a New Year's resolution that you've made as a sports fan for 2021?
I'm going to enjoy this upcoming Buffalo Bills playoff run for what it is and take a step back as best I can to just revel and enjoy being in the position that we are in because it has been a very long time. Now, I am very much hung up on the fact that the Bills have not won a playoff game in my lifetime. So hopefully we will get that done at some point this year. But to me, the biggest thing is that now it's 3 out of the last 4 years, and you kind of grow accustomed to it. And okay, this is what we expect and what the Bills organization has done. But for the first 17 years of my life, we had nothing. And I'm very aware of how it feels to perennially be on the outside looking in of the playoffs, of having a team that is not competitive, and most importantly, not having a quarterback who is good enough to put you in the upper echelon of the league. That has certainly changed as of recently. So I am going to enjoy the Bills being in the playoffs. I'm going to take a step back to appreciate what that means and also appreciate that they seem to have found a bona fide franchise quarterback and something that you can't take for granted. I'm always and have always been so tired of the way Patriots fans would take Tom Brady for granted, how Packers fans would take Aaron Rodgers for granted. I'm going to sit back and I'm going to enjoy and appreciate what Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills have accomplished this year and enjoy the playoff run. That's my 2020 fandom New Year's resolution.
Yeah, Jimmy, for me, it kind of plays off Nick. My resolution is stop being such a prisoner in the moment when it comes to sports. I think in our business and what we do here in sports media, that's kind of that kind of entails what you should do every single day. We're always prisoners of the moment. You know, earlier we spoke about the Nets after 2 games. Can they win the championship? I'm a Philadelphia Eagles fan. I've seen Jalen Hurts for 15 minutes, and I think he's eons better than Carson Wentz, and I'm ready to trade him to Chicago for whatever they want. But again, at the end of the day, we can't be so quick to react to news like that. You always, as Nick said, you got to kind of take a step back, keep things in perspective, and look at the bigger picture. And that, you know, just because a team is playing well or just because a team is playing badly, that doesn't necessarily entail where they will ultimately end up, whether they'll be a great team or whether they'll be an awful team. So for me, Jimmy, it's not being a prisoner in the moment, understanding that for sports, it goes day in, day out, week in, week out, and it really is a process. And just because your team has a slow start doesn't necessarily mean that they won't end on a high note and vice versa. So for me, Jimmy, it's not being a prisoner in the moment, although I find myself wanting to be a prisoner in the moment every single day we talk about sports.
Certainly a valid resolution. So I think mine goes back very well to what we were talking about in the last segment. I will never take Titans Jaguars on Thursday Night Football for granted ever again. And you know, we talk in sports sometimes. We look at certain games, certain things. You're like, oh, that's not a good matchup. And look, there were 5 NBA games yesterday. Not taking that for granted. None of them were particularly close. But guess what? I watched them and I enjoyed them. Even though, yeah, will there be better games this season? Yeah, absolutely. But just to have it back, I think you have to sit there and say, you know what? Maybe I'm not going to be so cynical about this game or this matchup or how I think it's going to go. And maybe it's just more appropriate to sit back and say, hey, sports is great. Like, let's just kick back and enjoy it. And look, we examine sports and we look at this stuff with a critical eye, and we'll continue doing that, obviously. But I just want to enjoy it a little more. And we've got it back. Hopefully we can keep it. And it's just, I'm trying to just have fun, as generalized as that may sound. I think that's kind of how we have to look at it right now in 2020, as we go into 2021, I should say.
I'm with you there. No, I agree with you. I'm trying to think of more sort of New Year's resolutions here as you're talking, and I'm going through of things that I want to pay attention to and not taking things for granted. And that is, I think, a familiar theme from what we have seen through just 2020 in general, right? Not taking things for granted and making sure that you appreciate the things, the little things, whatever those might be, and that's something that I've certainly paid attention to as it relates to sports. I also feel like as sort of a secondary New Year's resolution, I need to stop paying attention to the just overall abyss of dumb opinions that exist on Twitter. So that's where I am sort of at number 2, because the next time I hear something about whether it be the Nets are going to win the NBA title after 2 games because they look good, or that the Bills stink and should play their third string quarterback because Josh Allen didn't play well against Kansas City the one time earlier this season, or LeBron should be on the bench because he airballed a free throw, or you know that those people are out there somewhere, or MJ would never have airballed that free throw. So, this is what we're talking about. So that's the other thing that I feel like I really need to focus on, because I could go at it all day with people on Twitter and just looking at stuff and saying, that might be the dumbest thing I've ever seen. Oh, wait, I scrolled down another comment, right? So you're just sitting there and it wraps and continues, and it's an endless cycle. So that's the other thing for me, where you're just, whether it be about the Bills, which people know they can sort of, it's a hot button issue. They can really get me going on that. But just in general, whatever it might be, if it's the NBA, NFL, college football, whatever it is, just some of the stuff that is said sometimes, I got to block it out and just be like, all right, that person doesn't know what he or she is talking about. And I don't need to necessarily correct them or say anything. I can just sort of laugh to myself and say, oh, well, you don't know what you're talking about. I think that might be a productive way to approach 2021.
Yeah, Jimmy, I'd also say we talk about taking things for granted. I would say a secondary resolution for myself is, when it is made available, attend more live games. I feel like, obviously here at WFUV, we have the privilege of covering the New York professional sports teams as reporters. But again, I think back to March and thinking to myself, after covering, I think the last game I covered was the Nets and the Spurs, after Kenny Atkinson had gotten fired for some odd reason. I don't know why to this day. But again, Kyrie Irving. Anyways, having said all that, I think, just going to games as a fan, I think not only reporting it, but just, I really felt like I took that for granted back in March, thinking, I'll cover a bunch more games this summer. I'll catch a couple games with my dad, with my brother, and not having that opportunity. I think not only for the purposes of covering it and being a reporter, but just attending live games and just enjoying it, putting your phone down and enjoying the action right in front of you, and just being one of the fans again, because as reporters, we have to be unbiased and we got to call it down the line, but just being a fan, being around other fans, and just enjoying that game atmosphere again.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Nick, I love what you said about people on Twitter.
Yes.
There are so many bad takes on Twitter. Like, it's full of them. I saw a really good tweet yesterday, actually. Somebody had said that so many people on Twitter made their headway by being LeBron James extremists on one side or the other. Like, on the one hand, oh, he stinks, he's terrible, whatever. And on the other hand, like, this guy's the greatest thing ever. And look, I love LeBron, don't get me wrong, but those people are out there. And I think also you have to sit there and say, I'm not going to engage with that, because a lot of these people on the internet, they say stuff like that. They just want you to engage. Like, they'll get ratio. They don't care. Like, that's the whole name of the game. Because they know that you'll bite. It's like, a fish at the end of a line. So I think that's also really important. I'll say another resolution for me, and I'll probably end up breaking this one eventually. In 2021, I will not root for any of my teams to lose. And that's how I've ended 2020, with watching the Jets and rooting for everyone they play. Um, and I hope I don't have to do that in 2021. If I do, I do. But I'm also going to make that a resolution because there's really nothing worse than starting a season with whatever hope there is. In the Jets' case, probably not a ton. And you think, okay, you can win a few games, whatever. And then by week 6, you're pining for Trevor Lawrence. You might not even get. But you're sitting there saying that the best path forward for this team that you root for, you care about, and you love is for them to lose the rest of their games. And it's what we've needed to do in 2020 as Jets fans, is root for them to lose. But I hate doing it. And look, it would have been the best way forward for them to get the number 1 pick. I don't think that's going to wind up happening, but it really stunk to watch those games. To be excited about a Las Vegas Raiders Hail Mary when they're down 4 to win the game against your own team. That's an experience that, while it had fleeting moments of fun, it's also something that I never want to do again. If I have to, okay, but I never, ever want to root for any of my teams to lose ever again. It's just not fun for me anymore.
So, in keeping with the Jets, and this is going to be my final one that I know I will break at some point, is to take the high road, okay? And that involves being a little bit nicer to Jets fans. Now, that will ignore the group chat that I was entered into at halftime of week 1 in 2019 about how great Sam Darnold was and how bad Josh Allen was. I'll just throw out a few names who might or might not have been involved in that group chat. That would be Emmanuel Berbari, Jackson Heil, and Dominic Capone, right? I will ignore the noise of how great the Jets were at times, or how warranted Joe Namath is to be a Hall of Famer. I will refrain from sending jersey swaps of Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville gear. I will no longer send edits of Justin Fields in a Jets uniform. And I will not send the picture around, or will not continue the circulation of the guy who got a Trevor Lawrence Jets jersey already, with his hands on his head as he watches the Jets take a knee on the first overall pick. So I'm not going to do any of that. I'm just going to enjoy my successes and not necessarily pay attention to the failures of others. But that's going to be one of my sort of taking the high road New Year's resolution. I don't need to kick the Jets while they're down. Adam Gase already took care of that for me. So I don't really need to engage in any of that stuff. So I'm going to take the high road and be a little bit nicer to Jets fans in particular. I think is really where the high road New Year's resolution is going to center around. So Jimmy, if I have offended you, I know I made a couple of remarks, even in college football gridiron, about Trevor Lawrence and him not being a Jet. And while I won't say he's going to be a Jet, I am sorry for the pain that has caused you. That is my New Year's resolution number 3. I'm going to take the high road on the Jets.
Jimmy, do you want to respond to that?
Not really, no. I think, Nick, this is, I mean, how long are we giving this? 4 days? Like, the Jets play their last game on January 3rd against the Patriots. They'll probably win, if we're being honest. And I mean, as soon as that game ends, you're gonna send me the Trevor Lawrence Jaguars Photoshop, aren't you?
Well, he might be wearing the black uniform instead of the teal. I mean, I might switch it up a little bit, right? Maybe the white jersey.
Whatever.